I've known this man quite some time. He was in charge of the New York Jets organization, grocery shopping for many a moon, 2001 to 2012, and then he spent a few years the organization of the Miami Dolphins. Now he's on the worldwide leader in sports. Joining us on the Mercedes-Benz Vans hotline and phone line right now is our friend, Mike Tannenbaum. How are you, Mike?
Good, Rich. Great to be with you. How's it going?
I'm in a mood, Mike. I'm not going to lie. I'm in a mood. Joe Flacco starting for the Jets, Mike. Second straight year. What gives? I'll give you the floor on why you think they made this decision. Go for it.
Yeah, interesting decision, Rich. I didn't see that one coming. You know, I, like most of us, most in the football world, were really encouraged by Mike White. I thought he played really well against the Colts and a couple of other preliminary showings, and thought he was a guy that maybe they had something in, and had a bad day against Buffalo, which, candidly, a lot of quarterbacks are going to have bad showings against that Bills defense. And little surprised that they're going with Flacco. And obviously their future is all about Zach Wilson.
I know, but what could possibly be the decision? I mean, you've been in rooms where maybe groupthink takes over, or they sit here and they think that they got their ass kicked in front of their home crowd against the Bills, and we don't want to do that again against Miami. I mean, Saleh basically said, you know, the cover zero stuff that Flacco's been there, done that, gives him a better chance to win. Mike?
Yeah, I think he just gave you really good insight on what he was thinking, which is, if we go back a week ago, and that's exactly what Miami did, blitz their safety, so middle of the field's wide open, big risk reward in terms of defensively. The old saying, you're going to live by the blitz, you're going to die by the blitz, and Lamar Jackson, Baltimore really struggled with it, and that's a defense that Coach Flores believes in, and Joe Flacco does have a lot more experience than Mike White, and I'm sure that was part of it. It's a home game, one that I'm sure they think they can win, and probably because of his experience, that's why they're going to go with Flacco. But candidly, I was a little surprised. Again, Mike White hasn't been perfect, but I thought he had shown enough in some of the other games, Cincinnati, New England, that, hey, let's at least give him another opportunity here against a division rival with a good defense, because maybe it's Mike White and Zach Wilson moving forward, because Joe Flacco, to me, I just don't see him being part of that team in the future.
Does ownership have a decision in this process with the Jets at all?
I don't think so, Rich. You know, Woody Johnson was very supportive when I was there. We certainly would talk about things like the quarterback position often, but he would never mandate to say, hey, let's go with Flacco this week because Mike White looked bad against Buffalo. He was a listener. He was a guy that would ask questions, but never one that would mandate who to play.
Okay. Did you guys ever have a seance there to try and get rid of whatever the hell hangs over the Jets franchise? Did that ever happen, Mike, at any point in time? Anybody that sit around and go, you know what, there's something off around here? I know you made 2 AFC championship games in a row, and that might have been the version of that, but after that, as we all know, butt fumbles happened. Everything kind of went in a different direction. So did that ever happen, Mike? Anybody ever suggest that with the Jets?
You know, we tried a lot of things, Rich, as you know. You know,
Tebow,
Genie, Rex.
Right.
We got some wrong with Tebow, but I don't know. Like, to me, you got to be patient, and if you believe in the process that got Robert Saleh, you believe in the process to go get Zach Wilson, you got to give it time. And I know that's hard sometimes, and things are kind of bumpy right now. I certainly thought they would have played better against Buffalo, but you got to stay the course and just live with the growing pains.
Okay, I'm gonna go here with you, if you don't mind, Mike Tannenbaum. And here's with Rex. Do you know of a single soul that's comparing Robert Saleh to Rex Ryan, or Rex to Robert Saleh, other than Rex? Honestly, you must be around the whole Jet fandom or hear a lot. You know, a lot of folks back in New York. I do. I haven't heard a single one. What's he talking about? What's that all about?
That one caught me, off guard, to be candid. Now, look,
yes,
Rex is a paid commentator, and he's going to say exactly what he thinks, and that's the Rex that we all know and love, that I worked with for 4 years. But, yeah, to compare himself personally to Coach Saleh was a surprise to me. Now, Rex is certainly entitled to his opinion, Rich, and obviously he hasn't been pleased with his performance.
No, I get it. But I don't understand it. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, Rex, look, because you were the one who hired Rex, right, Mike? Correct? Back in the day? Right.
Yep.
No, perfect. It was so perfect because that's exactly what the Jets needed. They needed a chest pounder. They needed to say somebody like, I'm not going to kiss Belichick's rings. That's what they needed at the time. But right now, what they need is someone like Saleh. I don't understand why one has to take away from the other. You know, I don't get that one. I don't.
Totally fair. And there is, like I said, I was surprised that he took it to a personal level. And Rex is going to talk about coaches and, be up and down on them like anybody else in covering our sport. But I was surprised that he made it personal.
All right, Mike. You're a high-class guy. You know what I mean? And it's just, I don't know. It's just, we're here again, man. We're here again. So is Zach the guy? Is he? I mean, I know we haven't seen anything yet, but I mean, you're already seeing other teams with the ability to begin to assess who they have and what they have. Jets are still sitting here and starting Joe Flacco week 11 without an answer again about their quarterback.
Rich, one thing I would say, though, is I was very disappointed in what Zach Wilson said in August when he was comparing himself to, hey, I'm studying Aaron Rodgers. And what I would have said to him back then is like, look, Aaron Rodgers is a fully formed adult. Like, learn how to drive a car in the right-hand lane, learn the value of a check down, learn the value of a punt. Aaron Rodgers has made, he's an all-time great who made a lot of mistakes and learned along the way. And I think the Zach Wilson we heard last week, I thought that was a marked improvement. I thought it was a much more humbled and one that realized that playing quarterback in pro football takes a minute. And I never, ever root for injuries to anybody. But with that said, I think him getting hurt is a real benefit because now we could sit back, watch, and learn. And that's candidly something that he needed to do. Mm-hmm. And let's see him. Like, we know, Rich, he can make the flash plays. We've seen it. We saw it in the Tennessee game. What we need to see now is, hey, check the ball down, or a punt is a good play.
Mike Tannenbaum here on the Rich Eisen Show. I guess it's the Mike Tannenbaum Bowl in MetLife. The Dolphins are walk me through what you think happened with Stephen Ross and Deshaun Watson the night that they met. What do you think happened with that?
I don't know if they met, but I will say this. I think looking into it was a really smart move by the Dolphins, and here's why. When you have the ability to talk to a player under the tampering rules, and I'll give you a perfect example, Rich. Once we got permission to talk to Brett Favre when we were at the Jets, it took us about 3 weeks for us to convince him to come to us over Tampa Bay. It didn't work out now. I think that's been well reported. But here's what I will say. If and when in March they decide that, hey, we still want to go get Deshaun Watson, they have a competitive advantage because Houston's going to call all the other teams, Philadelphia, Denver, and anybody else that could have an interest in Watson. And now at least Miami has a foundation of a relationship. So even though it didn't work out short term, I could understand why a team who has questions about their quarterback would look into Watson. That's different than making the decision to acquire him because obviously this is a very complicated situation. So I think the story's not over because Watson hasn't been traded. And next March when this heats up again, Miami's starting well ahead of their competitors.
Are you in the Tua's just a guy camp in the evaluation of Tua? There seems to be two camps. Like, let's everybody back off. Let's see what he can do. I'm in that camp. And then you hear Tua's just a guy. Certainly when you'd evaluate him compared to Justin Herbert on a field when you're talking about professional football, which camp are you in regards to Tua?
Well, I'm in the same camp I've been since before they were drafted. I had Herbert as my number one quarterback because I felt like he was the biggest, the fastest, the strongest, the smartest. And if he had played in the SEC, he would have been the first pick in the draft. So I've always been very, very high on Herbert.
I love that. Had he played in the SEC? So it was the Pac-12 that knocked him down 2 pegs in the quarterback order behind Burrow and Tua?
100%. Yeah, Rich, there is such a bias in, and justifiably so, that SEC players will get boosted up. And I've done studies on this, both from a team standpoint and a media standpoint. Fair or unfair, if you play in the SEC, that's going to elevate your status. And Justin Herbert is a guy that attracts no attention to himself, who is a great player. And if they had beaten Auburn on opening day his last season, he may have – and I predicted that he was going to be the first pick in the draft, win the Heisman and the national title, which is, the Triple Crown. And they were close to doing that. And I think if he had played at a SEC school, not Oregon, the narrative around him would have been completely different.
All right, and I'll be honest with you, Mike. I'm a diehard Jet fan, as you know, and I follow this stuff professionally, as you know. I don't know if I've ever heard that Favre might have gone to Tampa instead of the Jets back in the day. I'd not heard that one before. Is that what happened?
John Gruden was recruiting him. John Gruden had coached him in Green Bay and was then the head coach at Tampa. He lived much closer to Tampa than he did New York. He didn't know at the time the offensive coordinator, Brian Schottenheimer, the head coach, Eric Mangini, or myself. and we were at a competitive disadvantage, and we had to work our tails off to convince Brett that he could have a great experience in the woods of New Jersey, as I kept trying to recruit him that there is hunting and fishing in New Jersey.
Right.
And eventually we were able to convince him to come.
Well, because you had to acquire him from Green Bay, though, right? Like he's still, right? You still had to, but Brett was on his own tour, and so Green Bay would have still had sent him within conference? Not a problem? That was definitely not an impediment to all of that?
No, I think they certainly would have preferred to trade him to the AFC. That was the one thing we had going for ourselves. But obviously we couldn't make a trade until we knew that Brett was going to come and not retire.
Okay.
And that took several weeks to convince him that he could have a great experience, not only on the field, but it's a great part of the country. And he was not a Northeast guy, and he was, somebody that was very comfortable in the South. So it took us, like I said, several weeks to eventually convince him that if we made the trade with Green Bay, which they would prefer to make with us, that he would come and play.
Mike Tannenbaum here on the Rich Eisen Show. A few more minutes left with the former executive, front office executive, grocery shopper, capologist, and now analyst. You wear many hats, Mike. You've worn many, many hats. So does this look like deja vu all over again for the Patriots to you from back in the day right now, or what? What do you think?
Absolutely. And I was fortunate to cover Mac Jones at the Senior Bowl for ESPN, and he reminds me of Matt Ryan, Rich. He is a good, not great athlete. He has a good arm, not an elite arm, but he's smart. He throws with great accuracy and anticipation. And he's somebody that I think is a perfect fit for New England because play action and precision, the receivers have to be in certain spots, and he will get the ball in time. And I think he's someone that one of the things that Coach Belichick, Rich, always talks about is let the opponent lose the game before we ever have to win it. And that's something that he does very well. He will not beat himself. And I'm fascinated to watch these two games against Buffalo because if you and I were talking in a month, Rich, I wouldn't be surprised if New England won the division this year.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, they got the Titans too, Mike. Like they have the teams that they just need to beat right in front of them. And then they could just go into the playoffs with as high a seed as they possibly can get and roll with it. I just love that. So we always hear the do your job. He's like, let the other team lose it before you have to win it. That's a phrase that you've heard him say, huh?
Yeah, multiple times. That's one of his big tenets is like, and if we're going to lose, let's lose by our opponent beating us left-handed. We're going to take away what our opponent does great. We're going to double team their best player or whatever it is. And if we're going to lose, let's make our opponent beat us with their second or third best option.
Mm-hmm. So are you saying if Mac Jones, if the Jets took him second overall, he'd be injured watching Flacco right now as opposed to where he is? Is that what you're telling me? Is that what you're saying?
If you don't mind, if we can broaden this discussion somewhat geographically, I think the other interesting discussion is, what is Kyle Shanahan thinking today?
Okay.
Trey Lance compared to Mac Jones. Because
go for it. You have at that then. Go for it.
Right. Because, to me, Mac Jones may wind up being a better player than Trey Lance, and San Francisco traded up multiple first-round picks, and I was candidly surprised that they didn't take Mac Jones because I thought he would have been a perfect fit there. So while the Jets may have some, we'll see how it plays out. And look, again, it's early, but I think how Mac Jones is playing is not a fluke.
Oh, so let's go there. I kind of dig this, and I was just being facetious, obviously, about Mac Jones, but it is the nature versus nurture thing. Do you think had Mac Jones gone to San Francisco and they had not gotten Trey Lance, he would have forced the issue with Jimmy G? And what we're seeing in New England might have been, and again, they just flat out released Cam, but they wouldn't have done that with Jimmy G. But do you think that would have happened, given the opportunity that Mac would have gotten the snaps and we'd be seeing in San Francisco what we're seeing in New England with Mac Jones, do you think?
In my opinion, here's how I think it would have played out.
Please.
I think they would have released Jimmy G, and here's why. I think Mac Jones shows up. He wins them over from day one, and Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are going to go by what they see, and they would not have guaranteed Jimmy G's $24 million salary because as a vested vet, when he was on the roster on opening day, they owed him $24 million. And I think from, call it June 1st, Rich, after the draft to opening day, they would have had enough of a sample size to say, we're rolling with Mac Jones, and they would have tried to trade, but ultimately they would have cut Jimmy G to stay, in my opinion, to save that $24 million.
Yeah, how about that? Isn't that amazing if that's the case? It's amazing. Mac Jones is is the real deal. It's just shown that. Last one for you. Who's the first overall pick in next year's draft? How does that shaping up right now as the college football season winds down? What do you got for me on that?
Rich, that's a simple question and complicated answer. I mean, the best player to me is probably Kayvon Thibodeau from your neck of the woods, L.A., and plays in Oregon, and he, to me, is a similar version to Chase Young. I just don't think there's a quarterback that's in that conversation right now. So Thibodeau's up there. Derek Stingley, the corner from LSU, would probably be a top 5 pick as well.
Okay. Very good. Thanks for the call, Mike. And just, even though what you said, I'm still a guy from Staten Island. You know what I mean? Even though I've got a different
Thanks so much for having me, Rich.
Take care of yourself, Mike Tannenbaum. You're the best. You be well. That's Mike Tannenbaum. Good guy. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.